So we finally have the early spoilers for Chapter 20 of Boruto Two Blue Vortex, and it seems that Mitsuki's finally having his 1 versus Ryu, and it's not looking good. Now before we get into it, there's something way more important that we need to address, which is that Chapter 20 is the 100th chapter of Boruto in general. So that's the 80 chapters of Part 1 and the 20 chapters of Two Blue Vortex. And typically, when this happens, when a manga reaches this milestone, something very important happens in the story. Maybe something world-changing, or the death of a relevant character. So I'm just gonna say this isn't the full spoiler, so just be on the lookout for something crazy happening in this chapter. Now, it's also possible that they do something outside of the manga, like maybe announce when the anime is going to return, or some other side project being put into production. So I guess we'll see, but I'll let you guys know if something happens. Now, as for the spoiler, it seems that Mitsuki is taking on Ryu 1 versus 1, and I just want to point out that Ryu still seems to be faster than Mitsuki because none of his attacks are landing, at least based on these panels. So obviously, Mitsuki isn't going to 1v1 Ryu, and that wouldn't make sense since what would be the purpose of his other teammates? Now Mitsuki can contribute in other ways, since the weakness of Ryu's Iron Sand is lightning, so someone with a powerful enough lightning release can bypass Shinki's Iron Sand, and that's because electricity generates heat, which can be used to weaken the surface of iron. It could also induce magnetic fields that can deform the iron itself, which might be the reason behind the weakness, since fire would also be a counter if heat was the true culprit. Either way, what we realized from the prior chapter was that Mitsuki has the attack potency needed to damage Ryu. He just isn't fast enough to catch him without the help of someone else. And since they no longer have Araya's sword, which was able to restrict his movement, speed will be very important going forward. Now this then leads me to Swift Release, which is one of the many Kicker Genkais in the Naruto universe. As you guys know, these types of abilities are described as DNA anomalies that allow its wielder to use unique abilities. Now I did cover this before in a prior video, so if you guys want to get the in-detail analysis, you guys can go watch that one. But I do think it's really relevant because Mitsuki's main problem is speed. Swift Release is one of the lesser-known Kicker Genkais within the Naruto universe. In fact, we've only seen it once in the Will of Fire movie. It pretty much gives the user near instantaneous speed, becoming nothing more than a blur while in motion. To date, this form of nature manipulation has only ever been used by Hiroko, who obtained it using his Chimera technique to steal Kicker Genkais. So if you didn't watch that movie, you probably have no idea what I'm talking about. And to a certain extent, you may consider it filler, since it wasn't in the mainline continuity. Though the same could be said for Steel Release, which initially debuted in the movie as well, but was later canonized in the Gaara hidden novels. So I could see a case where this happens with Swift Release as well. Now, when it comes to Mitsuki, he's only listed as having Jugo's Kicker Genkai, which pretty much allows him to passively absorb and manipulate nature energy. So there isn't any record of him having any unique elemental-based Kicker Genkai, which seemed a bit weird given Orochimaru's capabilities. Even so, he still possesses the nature types known as Wind and Lightning Release, which are coincidentally the base elements required to use Swift Release, at least in theory. Now, the reason why I say in theory is because it was never confirmed what two elements were used to create Swift Release. What we do know for a fact is that elemental Kicker Genkai do require the usage of two nature elements, so it's not a matter of whether this is true or not. The real question is which two elements were used in its creation. With that said, if we were to observe the ability in action, it is very clear that Wind Release is one of the elements used for this ability, and it's also listed on the wiki page as well. Now, as for the second element, this has been a debate within the Naruto community for years, with some saying lightning and others saying earth, but for the most part, lightning seems to be what most people agreed with. It also made the most sense, since wind and earth has been confirmed to form magnet release, which has no relation to the effects of Swift Release as depicted in the movie. Now, I say this because you do have instances where two elements are able to create more than one elemental Kicker Genkai, such as Wood Release. The caveat is that these techniques are similar in nature when Swift and Magnet isn't. Then you also have the fact that the Lightning and Wind combination doesn't have a confirmed Kicker Genkai, so anything can be attributed to it. And I think logically speaking, Lightning has been shown in the universe to a non-speed, and Wind Release has also been shown to a non-speed as well. So logically speaking, at a basic level, speed plus speed should equal more speed. So these nature releases being a combination for this Kicker Genkai makes the most sense. So, having wind and lightning release means that he has the base requirement needed to perform this ability. Now, I'm sure some of you guys are saying that Mitsuki was never stated to possess swift release, nor has he ever used it. So why would he suddenly have it? Well, the funny thing about this is that this has always been the case for most elemental kicker Genkai users. They develop them or become aware of them later on in life. A prime example of this is Hashirama himself, who showed no signs of wood release until his later years in life. And then you also have Muegi, who somehow developed wood release in the Boruto era, as stated in the data books. Now, I know some people who have done this say that it's a plot hole, but it really isn't. She possesses the base elements for wood release, which is water, so that simply means that if she ever was to develop an elemental kicker Genkai later on in life, it would be wood release, similar to Hashirama. That's just her genetic disposition. Now, taking that same and applying it to Mitsuki, his genetic disposition would be an ability based on lightning and wind, which is none other than swift release. And of course, if I'm being honest there have been some hints towards this development, such as Mitsuki pointing out how fast base Boruto was, and then you have this scene where he used Sage Mode for the first time in Blitz or Chimaru. That speed wasn't normal, it was near instantaneous. Not only the fact that the effects of wind and blood around his body similar to Hiruko using swift release in the Wheel of Fire movie. So it is possible that Mitsuki already has this power, but he doesn't know how to fully tap into it, since we didn't see it in any of his fights so far. By the way, swift release is superior to Flying Thunder God. And I know you guys are not gonna like this, but let me explain why. FTG does offer instantaneous teleportation, but it doesn't necessarily amp raw movement speed. So if someone is fast enough to hit you before you can activate there's nothing FTG can do about it. This also applies to your reaction speed after spawning. You'll still need raw movement speed to land your hits. And if the person you're trying to tag is physically faster than you outside of FTG, it does nothing for you in battle, as seen with Tobarama. Now, swift release, on the other hand, would also boost your movement and reaction speed to near instantaneous levels, thus making it all superior technique. There's also the fact that you need to perform hand signs each time you use FTG, whether it's with both hands or just one, while of course, with the superior technique, that of course being swift release, you just need to do it once to be able to use the ability continuously. Now, there might be some limitations or time limit for this ability, but that hasn't been shown as yet. So until then, we just have to go off what we know currently. Now, there is another way to win this battle when it comes to Mitsuki, and it has to do with poison. You see, Ryu was bitten by Mitsuki's snakes multiple times in the prior chapter, so it is possible, or plausible, that the snakes were able to inject some kind of poison into Ryu. Now, I know that these snakes are chocolate snakes, or at least they seem to be, so the most likely case is that they didn't inject poison. But who knows? Maybe Mitsuki was able to grease their fangs before they bit him, and they were able to inject some level of poison into him, and that might cause him to slow down over time. And I know that some might say that Mitsuki's venom wouldn't be strong enough to take down Ryu, but if he was able to take down Kawaki, who had his defense boosted to beyond maximum, which of course, that would be what would protect him against poison, not offensive power, so I don't see why it wouldn't affect Ryu. Now, I do have something else that goes into the entire Sage Mode stuff, and we spoke about it on stream yesterday, but I'm not gonna include it in this video because it's way more important than to be attached to a spoiler video. So it's gonna get its own video, and you guys can let me know your thoughts then. But yeah, that's it for this video. Let me know your thoughts down below. And also, guys, the full spoilers will be out maybe this Friday or Monday. It depends on when you guys get the stuff. More than likely, it's not going to be this week. That's typically not when spoilers drop. It's way too early. So more than likely, it's going to be on Monday. Which is a bit crazy, given the fact that the chapter comes out on Tuesday. So I guess we'll just have to wait and see what happens. But yeah, I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.